The end of this chapter is just such a One Piece moment. Luffy having literally no idea what's going on, and Kinemon pretending that this was his plan all along might not have been the most reassuring thing to happen, but it was definitely hilarious nonetheless. After finally returning to the present storyline last week, this chapter served as the final exposition for the battle on Onigashima, having all the forces assembled as was originally planned. Additionally, more open ends have been tied up so that we will now be able to focus fully on the battles to come, without having to deal with too many distractions. We see the trio of Luffy, Law, and Kid taking on Kaido's men with ease and fall back into the dynamic that they had before the time skip. The Alliance is also informed about the freshly forged pact between the Big Mom Pirates and the Beast Pirates, which surprisingly doesn't seem to impact them in the slightest. At the same time, Kyoshiro arrives at the scene with his men and immediately attacks another one of Kaido's ships. And while Ashura Doji can immediately tell that they're looking at an extremely strong fighter here, Kyoshiro reveals himself to the Scabbards as Denjiro. He does so very smartly by not saying it out loud and risking the doubt and suspicion of his friends, but he rather chooses to tell the true story behind the Mountain God incident and how Kinemon was the one responsible. Since next to Oden, Denjiro was the only other person who was aware of this, Kinemon immediately recognizes him. This was truly the perfect way for Denjiro to reveal himself to the Scabbards, while Oda also draws our memories back to the beginning of the flashback and thus tying everything that has happened into the present moment together. Finally, Denjiro explains how everyone understood Yasuie's changed message and how they all managed to gather at the new meeting point at Port Hato. Meanwhile, Kinemon had changed the location to Tokage and only told the other Scabbards. Denjiro thus concluded that Kinemon was fully aware of the traitor and was planning to expose him by changing locations once again. Only that it turns out that Kinemon had not even understood Yasu's message in the first place. However, he smartly keeps that fact to himself, as would I in his situation. In the end, all of the forces that the Alliance has gathered arrives at the port. The Yakuza, the bandits, the prisoners from the capital freed by Denjiro, in total 5,400 men. And the fleet is now ready to sail towards Onigashima. Goddamn. There is a lot to unpack in this chapter, so grab yourself your favorite hot or cold beverage of choice, and let's jump right into the chapter. I would argue that the purpose of this chapter is to draw a first striking parallel to the war at Marineford and to set the mood for the upcoming battle. Let's take a look. Chapter 975 of One Piece is out, and before we start looking at the details, I feel like we have to spare a moment here and talk about the new outfits of the Straw Hats. Let's start with Luffy. Him wearing this black captain's coat is something I've waited for since what feels like forever. The Kabuto armor for Chopper, Frankie, Usopp, and Nami also looks stunning. Sanji only got a pair of black gloves, and it still looks fantastic. And then there's Zoro, who wears pretty much the same stuff as always. Oh well, I guess he's badass enough though, the way he is. Also, Law appears to be wearing something that looks strikingly like the coat that Corazon was wearing, which I think is a fantastic move by Oda. Much appreciated. As always, I would like to hear your thoughts on this chapter, so make sure to let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoy this type of video, you would make my day by leaving me a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, thank you very much for everyone who sent me their One Piece artwork after last week's chapter. I would like to make this a thing now, so if you would like to have a chance to get your art featured in my reviews, you can either send me an email or simply add me on Twitter. Links in the description below. Now, what makes this chapter feel like the beginning of a new Marineford? I would say the biggest argument for this is clearly the general vibe we get here. Having all the ships of the Alliance gather on sea truly reminds me of Whitebeard's fleet arriving at Marineford. We have an entire fleet of Wano samurai, one of the strongest islands in the New World, gathered to take on two of the emperors. This chapter really made me believe that this is the battle that we'll be seeing. As Kaido's men say here, the banquet will be in honor of Big Mom and Kaido joining forces, and the Alliance is now on the march to not let this banquet happen. The second thing that made this chapter the perfect exposition for the battle is the way that Oda tied up so many loose ends that might have interfered with the battle that is about to erupt. We now know the identity of the traitor, Kanjuro, and we now also know the identity of Denjiro, and all of the scabbards have finally united. We do now know that all of the Alliance members have made it safely to the port in Tokage, and how they managed to escape Orochi's preemptive strike. We have Luffy, Law, and Kid as the main driving force in this battle, and all of them are now also aware that Big Mom will be waiting for them on the island as well. Bringing a closure to all of these plot points will allow us to focus on the events at hand, and I do expect the events at hand to be a long streak of amazing battle chapters. I think this chapter truly set this up content-wise, ambient-wise, and also emotion-wise. There are also some other details that enhance the vibe in this chapter even more. Simple things like the rainstorm that is raging as the fleet assembles, or the callback to the beginning of Odin's flashback that I mentioned earlier. One thing I would like to mention here is a very nice stylistic technique that Oda uses in this chapter to enhance this effect of anticipation and euphoria even more. He starts the chapter with the Beast Pirates listing more and more bad news, destroying all the ships, taking out the major bridges, the rebels being captured and killed the next day, and the Yonko forming an alliance. All of this was supposed to be possible because of Kanjuro's inside information that he relied to Orochi. However, this is almost immediately countered by Denjiro, who relies one good report after the next, once again highlighting how both Denjiro and Kanjuro are mirrored versions of each other. And while I think that the end of this chapter will make a bunch of people unhappy, considering that in the end everything only worked out based on dumb luck, I honestly think that this simply gives the entire thing a true One Piece-like touch. Dumb luck has always been part of the story, and I believe Oda's choice to integrate this comedic element into the otherwise quite serious vibe of Wano so far brought back some of the old One Piece vibes. I personally really needed that laugh, especially in times like these. Speaking of which, I do hope all of you are safe and sound and that you're making the best out of the situation. I think the right thing to do now is to stay calm, but to also take this seriously. Stay home if you can, and keep yourself and those who you love safe. I hope my videos can make a bit of a difference in your day as well. Much love to all of you. I appreciate you all being part of this channel, especially in times like these. You guys rock. Thank you. I hope to see all of you around next time, and until then, have a wonderful week.